And the power of J-Skull. Gotta warn me, man.
Welcome to, of course, the power of J-Skull. A very special The Power of J-Skull. And, of course, with me is Jason, president of the Gwildor Fan Club.
Yes, cosmic key enthusiast.
So today, of course, we're getting a chance to do we're looking at the 1987 canon film release of Masters of the Universe.
Yeah,
this is a big deal. It's
a huge deal. It disappointed so many people at once on so many levels.
Well, as I kind of mentioned, this film was brought onto the universe by Canon Films, a very successful studio in the 80s.
At this point in history, they were more infamous than they were famous, but
they'd had some hits with Lee Marvin being in some things with a lot of Chuck Norris stuff.
It was the studio that Chuck Norris built.
Yeah, basically. And at this point, they started buying franchises. They bought the rights to Superman.
Yes, they
bought
did.
This. They were dealing with Marvel quite heavily too.
Yes, I believe that at one point they held the rights to Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And what was really interesting about this project is how clever they were with their negotiating. Especially Golden Globus, who were the producers of this, were quite smart. At this point in time, we've got to say that the He-Man toy sales were starting to slump quite heavily.
Yes, so we're getting the end of the Renaissance.
The end of the Renaissance. So Mattel obviously want to keep this money-making machine alive, so they're very keen to maybe get a film going, helps promote the toys, keeps their brand alive, everyone's happy. And obviously, over at Golden Globus and Canon, they're needing a hit because they're not getting them. They're not making money. So very smart of Canon to turn around and go, well, Mattel, how's this? We'll go 50-50 in this film. We'll finance it 50-50. And Mattel went, beauty, and Canon go, but you got to put your 50% up first.
Yeah.
And Mattel went, okay. And then essentially they get halfway through the production of this film. They run out of money. And Canon turned back to Mattel go, well, it's time for you to put up your money. It's time for you to pay for that. And they go, no. Forcing Mattel to then finance the second half of this film.
Yes.
Which was pretty crazy stuff. Wanted to put that code a bit because I think the environment they created for this film reflects a lot of it on screen.
Yes, and it really does. And you can tell something is off, that there are magnificent sets in this movie. The Grayskull throne room, for example, was at the time the largest studio set that had ever been built. They actually knocked down a wall in the studio to build this thing. And, the Skeletor costume looks great. Many of the monsters look great. And then they go to Earth and everything is done on the cheap. So it's almost like you're watching two different movies here. And it's just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
It is, because it is. It's one of those things. As I was watching it, as you're bringing up the fact that it is two different films. I do believe they knew very early on that they had to set it on Earth. So the script was written with that in mind. Though it feels like when you're watching it, it was like they were half through filming it and going, "We're out of money. We need to fix this quickly." Rewrite. But no, this was planned.
It was a trope at the time that you put fantasy elements on Earth, and it was not only a money-saving tactic, but it was also the fish out of water story that was very popular at the time. I mean, Star Trek came along a few months before this one, put Kirk and Scotty and Bones on Earth and made a ton of money. I mean, for a while, Star Trek 4 was one of the top 100 grossing movies of all time. So it was a formula that worked. And so, I completely buy that this was the plan from the very beginning.
And it's not only it's like on Earth, but it's that it took elements from horror where you set it in an alien thing where you set it in middle America suburbia.
Yes.
It's a middle America where you've got your very much apple pie, the best of American kind of good values, and put that kind of scenario in that environment. So yeah, it is very much a product of the time. It, however, I've got to say, there are some things in this that really work, and there are some things that do not. And somewhere in the middle, I think I just felt kind of nostalgic, but also yet kind of saddened by a missed opportunity in this film.
That's kind of the impression I got. Watching this, it was nowhere near as bad as I thought I remembered it as. It's
Mm.
actually fairly entertaining in some places, and I'm just going to say it, marvelously casted. Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, perfect. Frank Langella as Skeletor,
Let's
perfect.
have a look.
Yes.
Sorry, I had
I'm
to take
sorry.
that photo because I'm
He's
sorry,
perfect.
that's the cheesiest grin he does.
That's okay. It works. This is Masters of the Universe 87. And that
Sorry,
man right
yeah,
there was having
Skeletor.
so much fun. He actually said in an interview that he did this movie strictly because his kids were fans of He-Man. And whenever they heard that he was going to play Skeletor, they went nuts, and he just had as much fun with it. And it's actually kind of funny because Frank Langella said that Masters of the Universe was one of the most fun movies he's ever made. And Dolph Lundgren, in the meantime, says it was the most miserable experience of his career.
Yeah,
So,
Frank Langella has come out and said he
yeah,
thinks it's one of his best performances
I agree.
that
He
he's
was so
done.
much fun.
And he's right. He's right. Now, what's interesting enough is Frank Langella, like you were talking about earlier about the look and feel, like the makeup and that, he had a lot to say in the look of Skeletor. And the cloak, apparently they had to come up with like 20 until he got a cloak that felt just right, that it moves the right way. So he was very particular. And he was being a very great steward for the Masters of the Universe franchise, ensuring that Skeletor was not only looked the part, but his performance is the backbone of this movie.
Yes, he was the MVP, the most villainous player.
And you know what? The director knew that when they started filming. Gary Goddard, who directed this film, was he got to choose Frank Langella, so he was very happy with that casting. But he inherited Dolph Lundgren, and he was very concerned that Dolph carry it through.
Yes.
And was very alarmed when he started seeing dailies and seeing that Dolph's line delivery very problematic. And that is, to me, physically, Dolph Lundgren is perfection as he looks the part, his action, everything was great. But this is a guy who made one film prior, and that was Rocky IV.
Yes, I will break.
His line deliveries were awful. In fact, he had it in his contract that he could at least do his ADR 2 or 3 times before they replaced him. Yeah. Thankfully, he worked on it, and that got him over the line. But But it's not just Frank Langella that's a superstar in this film. As far as I'm concerned with the villains, Jason, who do you think I'm talking about?
As far as villains go?
Yes.
Oh, that could only be Meg Foster as Evil Lynn. Oh my gosh, she is so beautiful. I'm sorry. Yeah. She is one of the most underappreciated actresses of the 80s. Just those icy blue eyes. Wow. All she had to do was stand there and stare, and she had such a presence. And just the amount of research she did into this role was absolutely insane. She based Evil Lynn, I believe, on a character from Hamlet. And you're asking me now, I've gone blank. I can't remember who.
Wow. Okay,
but she had this entire backstory on Evil Lynn that she was in love with Skeletor, but her love was unrequited. And so, she stuck around because she was still fascinated by this man and his power. And yet at the same time, she also loathed him and wanted to destroy him. And if you watch that, knowing what she did in preparation to play Evil Lynn, all of it comes out in this
especially
character.
In this scene, Jason, this scene here,
yes,
where he's stroking her face on the throne, remember?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Which every time really alluded to that heavily. That there
every time I see a picture of her, my heart flutters because that's just the first thing I think of is she is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Yeah. And I will fight you if you disagree.
Oh, I'm not going to. I loved her all throughout the
Yes.
80s. And a lot of films. I'm like, they live. I think I mentioned she was in
I wish she would have had a bigger career. I know she had a very impressive career, and she's still acting today. She still looks lovely. I think she's in her 70s now, but my gosh, she should have been an absolute
She should have,
superstar up
because
there
it's
with
not a
Julia
talent.
Roberts and Sandra Bullock.
It's not a talent issue, because
No,
when you're
she
talking
had
about line
talent.
delivery, she sells everything she says.
Yes, she does.
And so she's absolutely wonderful. Now, I come out earlier in a chat before watching this saying that the villains are they are the center point of this movie. And believe it or
Yes.
not, after doing some research, that was done in intention. They actually started rewriting the script to make sure that this movie was told more through Skeletor's point of view rather than He-Man, because they were concerned about whether He-Man could pull it off.
Skeletor has always been the most interesting character.
Exactly.
Always.
Exactly. But let's have a look at it. We might as well keep going through the cast. Let's talk about the good guys.
Okay.
So, I mean, I will just bring up the trilogy of good guys here. I like who they cast as Man-at-Arms. Kind of dug him. I thought he did really well.
I thought he was serviceable. He was perfectly adequate. Now, granted, he did not have a lot to work with.
No,
and I'm not knocking the actor in the least bit. But I thought perfectly adequate character.
Tila, however, really could have gone with someone who probably was a more natural performer. I thought she was very stilted. She gets to say one line within the movie where she does a whole woman at arms, kind of a wink to the camera and all that. And it's such a poor delivery. And this is where the film starts to suffer, is the lack of, you've surrounded it with people like Meg Foster and Frank Langella, but then there's a massive drop-off in the way of talent. And I think that really starts to affect things. I mean, look at the real star of the movie.
With one exception we'll talk about later.
Yes,
we'll talk
right
about him
now.
before, but yes, we will talk about
that.
Oh, there he is.
The man who's really is the backbone of the good guys, and performance-wise is holding up that whole kind of group.
Yes. And I know that people who watch this movie hate on Gwildor. But ladies and gentlemen, the man underneath that makeup is one Billy Barty, who is an absolute legend. Not only a famous character actor who, if you were around in the 80s and 90s, you literally saw his face everywhere, always playing a curmudgeon-y, grumpy little person, but doing it with every ounce in his body and committing to every role. And not only that, he went on to found the Little People's Association of America, who not only fight to make sure that little people are elevated and that they are not exploited by the Hollywood system, as they had been for many, many years and unfortunately are today, but also to get out information to regular people about dwarfism and, just information that they can't get anywhere else. So we respect Billy Barty in this house.
Without
bless
question.
you, Billy Barty. You left this earth 23 years ago, and we all miss you. And Gwildor was great. Now he should have been Orko.
He's playing Orko.
But he was great. He is Orko.
He's playing Orko. There is no question. No. He's watched the animated series, and he has layered a fantastic performance that's built on the backbone of Orko from that cartoon.
Yes.
And I know, and they told us in the making of that I watched, they said the reason they didn't go with Orko is because they found it too challenging from a special effects point of view, which I'm going, I don't get it. Why don't you just have him, when Susie gets to Earth, the gravity is different and he can't float. So there you go. Just solve that problem.
Yeah, it's a movie.
It's a bit of wire work.
Just put him in a red cloak with an O on it and a red hat, and you can't see his face. We would have accepted it. It's fine. It's the 80s. We didn't have that technology. Don't put Billy Barty on a string. We don't want to hurt him. It's fine. Just have Orko walk.
It would have been fun. Instead, we put him through probably 5 hours of makeup every day to wear what is this giant mask. And again, we will show a lot of love to Billy Barty because he is able to emote a really great performance out of that.
And he can barely move his mouth, but his entire performance is carried with his eyes.
Yeah,
and Gwildor has, in my opinion, the only laugh out loud line in the entire movie because there's so much cringe humor.
Yeah,
There is one great moment where
Mhm.
Gwildor comes out and he's wearing ladies' sunglasses and like a boa and everything like that. And he says, "Look, native clothing. If we wear this, no one will recognize us." And Tom Paris, I don't know his real name, but I don't know the character's name. Tom Paris just, first time seeing him, points at it and says, "What the hell is that?" And Gwildor just goes, "See?"
See?
It's a trash movie, but it is such a diamond line. I just love it so much.
Yeah. Interesting point here is we also, besides the bad guys, we've got our teenagers. This is Courtney Cox's first movie.
Do you think she puts this on her resume?
Yeah, got to, don't you? She's actually very serviceable in this, and
she was. I mean, she did what she did with what she was given, and elevated it to the point that she was not annoying. You actually felt sympathy for her and what she was going through and her trauma.
Except that really dumb decision to go out to the alleyway. Like,
yeah, it was so dumb. It was dumb.
But
this movie has got lots of dumb in it.
Yeah, a lot of dumb plot points.
If this movie did not have dumb plot points, it would have been over in 2 minutes.
So no, I thought she was quite good. Again, we talk about Tom Paris, Robert McNeil.
Yeah, Robert
McNeil.
RDM, there he is.
And really was able to save his performance in this film, because in the first 10 minutes of seeing him, I found him quite irritating.
Yes.
Quite irritating.
Yeah.
But they were able to give him enough to do, make him, important to the plot to some sense, that he was able not to be just that really annoying character in the whole thing. So he kind of worked. But also the sorceress. Now, there's the sorceress there. Do you know who she is? Do you know who she ends up playing at one point?
I don't know. Who is that?
Well, if we have Courtney Cox from Friends, her mother.
That's Courtney Cox's mother?
In Friends.
Oh, in Friends. Okay.
Well, ended up playing her mother in Friends for kind of years. So that was kind of nice.
And I have to say, it was an interesting direction they went with the sorceress. She's always kind of been the damsel in distress character, like, oh no, they're coming to kill everybody in Grayskull. What should I do? Yeah. But here, they kind of made her a little older, a little more stately. She stands up for herself, even though she's held prisoner during the entire movie. And her costume was fabulous.
Yeah, she was, and she was aging throughout it, though, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. Yes.
Before everything goes back to the way it should be. Yeah, she's starting to look really old. But yeah, no, really good. Look, at the end of the day, if the villains were strong, they were strong, and then there comes to a point where they hit a brick wall. And I've got to talk about the crew, the gang, the supporting villains.
Yes.
First one, which I don't mind, I'm going to show, is Beastman. Beastman looks like him.
Yeah, Beastman. It was acceptable. I liked that he was a groveler. He was really tough, but whenever he feared for his life, he was kissing Skeletor's feet, quite literally.
Yeah. Would have liked to have heard him speak, though. That was
I don't know. Making him a silent villain, to me, actually kind of worked.
Yeah.
But, he's not the Beastman from the cartoon. This is a completely different universe. I don't really want to compare it to the cartoon. There are certain characters I wish they would have used instead. And I'm sure as we go through the rest of the gang, I'll tell you who I wish they had.
Well, that's the only one that really, in the gang, that I feel... Oh, except for... Have I got a picture of him, or did I... Tell me I've got a picture of him. It's the lizard creature, the one that dies very quickly.
Oh, yes.
Here we go.
Kenny.
I got it.
His name is Kenny.
Looked fantastic. I thought that he looked the best. Like, they put the most amount of money into his costume than anyone else's. So I didn't mind him, and I thought they dispatched him too early.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that should have been Cobra Khan.
Yeah.
I think, and they could have just easily just called him Cobra Khan, and we would have accepted it.
We would have bought into it.
Yeah, it's like, that's Cobra Khan. Okay. Oh, yes, and there's not Trapjaw.
That's not Trapjaw Blade, who every time he swung his sword in the movie was going, yes. Especially when he's cutting that fence, like unnecessarily 3 times in a row.
You cannot tell me that the first draft of this movie, he was not Trapjaw. I mean, he's even got the chin strap and everything. He's got the attachments. He was Trapjaw. They should have just kept him Trapjaw.
And the thing is, you would say, how did Mattel let this happen? Well, Mattel had final say and approval.
They wanted to
let
sell
this
more
go.
action figures. It's the Transformers principle.
Let's
You get
bring in
rid of all
some-
the originals, you bring in new characters. Look, boys and girls, new action figures. Do you want a Blade action figure? He has yes action. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Well,
Have a
maybe I
Gwildor.
would have wanted a Blade, but I can't tell you any kid that would have wanted this character.
I was kind of thinking that was supposed to be Merman.
I don't know, but just as a character, a sniveling, insecure villain that really didn't show any strength, was bound by the minions that would, the robot, Star Wars rip-off stormtroopers.
There was a lot of Star Wars in
There's a lot of Star, and we'll talk about, especially in the music too, by Bill Conti.
Yeah, we'll talk about here. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But yeah, I completely agree. He was just such a bland character, bland makeup. To me,
like the wig was so overwhelming from a visual perspective that it sold campiness where it didn't need to be sold.
He reminded He reminded me of that waitress Joe from Alice back in the 80s. Like, I swear that's the same wig. Because they were recycling props all the time. Speaking of recycling props, here's a bit of trivia for you.
Yeah.
The mold for Skeletor's mask was reused in a very famous television show.
Oh, do tell.
Yes. The Skeletor mask was reused in Star Trek: The Next Generation as Worf's workout program where he fights the monsters. It was the yellow-skinned monster. And if you look at it, that is Skeletor's face on that monster.
Yeah, and in fact, in Next Generation, they had the skin tone closer to what Skeletor actually looked like.
They kind of did,
anime,
didn't they?
Didn't they? They kind of got it better, done it right.
Yeah, because he's not white. He's yellowish. Yes, he's always been yellowish.
So you've got somebody like, the villains seem to be, look, they've got enough players and enough people to kind of make something interesting. And when it starts off in Eternia, my biggest problem with it is the design of Eternia. It looks post-apocalyptic.
It's a desert because they couldn't afford cities. That's all it is.
Think they could have done a matte painting of some trees or something, guys?
I
know we're not doing...
Yeah.
I like the idea of having, Snake Mountain should be desolate and horrible and things like that. And Grayskull can have that landscape a little bit as well. But when you're getting around to the Kingdom of Eternia and all that, you might have made it. But budgetary reasons weren't going to allow that, I suppose.
Well, I spent the entire first part of this movie wondering, why the heck are they fighting over this joint?
Yeah.
What is it about this place that they are fighting for?
Yeah, what's the appeal?
Even Castle Grayskull. This is the worst, most ugly, most gaudy interpretation of it. It is 100% 80s cheese dialed up to not only an 11, it's up to around 57. I mean, it is just terrible.
Yeah, like the design, that's where you're getting some
I don't even think it was structurally sound. If you look at it, there's almost like towers that are kind of off by themselves, just floating in midair. And I'm just like,
I'm pretty sure.
I know it's a fantasy world, but how does that work?
I have no idea, but you're right. He was not a great looking castle.
No. Now, the inside of the castle looked great. Yeah. I will say that.
Yeah, that throne room, as you kind of rightly said, it was one of the largest things built. There was supposed to be a lot more to be done in that space that they just didn't get to do. You know how this film wrapped shooting? By literally the producers coming in with a card and putting it in front of the lens and going, "You're finished." The director never stopped filming until literally the producers put themselves in front of the lens.
That's funny.
So, which I think is hilarious. So,
well, I know that the reason why the fight between Skeletor and He-Man at the end is done in silhouette is because most of the set was missing by that point.
Yeah, and and that's right. And they had to do. He was smart enough, the director, one night to go, "Hey, look, let me just do this as a safety measure," because he felt that they were going to stop him from filming it, which they did. So
yes, they did.
Again, Gary Goddard, well done for at least getting that through. So they definitely had some challenges there. But the special effects. Now, remember, this is pre-CGI, right?
Yes.
There's nothing going on at this period. It's all matte painting, optical effects,
All
miniatures, the
practical,
whole thing.
all
All
wonderful.
practical. Some of the models that they did, some of the shots were massive, and highly detailed. And as much as how ugly that Castle Grayskull was, they built that in miniature. It was quite impressive. Some of the other things I thought they did really well. You know, when they come to Earth and Skeletor's got his, what would you call it, a sail barge, a skiff? That's what I'm thinking.
I don't know. His
I
bone
don't know what it is, but it looked great. I liked it. It was intimidating. You know,
it's like he's in a giant flower.
Yeah, you know it's sitting on a trailer and they're just dragging it with a
absolutely.
or something.
If they could afford a truck, there may just be a bunch of key grips pulling it with ropes.
Yeah. And this is the thing about the movie that I kind of get confused about. I think they did the best possible job to make this functionally work with what they had. They had to come up with an idea of having these guys go to Earth, make it make sense, make it push the story forward. And I think they did a half-decent job.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was writing this, how I would get around it. Do I agree they should have had a giant battle in a music store? Maybe not, but it plays off later because it's all about the tones, isn't it?
Yes. And you know, without this movie, we would have never gotten the best He-Man comic of all time, The Masters of the Universes, where the cosmic key actually is like the MacGuffin that they have to use to fight anti-Eternia He-Man. And yes, the Dolph Lundgren He-Man actually appears in this comic book.
Wow.
The He-Man of many universes appear in this comic book. It's actually quite good.
Oh, excellent. I didn't even know about that. That's a great recommend.
There is a Skeletor He-Man. Where Prince Keldor remains with his family and eventually becomes, you know, the keeper of Grayskull. But all of the masters,
People's Champion,
like Tila and all the others, are the Dark Masters. So it's like they both switch sides. Yeah. And then there's a cartoon He-Man, which is hilarious.
All right, let's kind of cut to the. What about before we do, what about what's his name? What's his name in Back to the Future?
Oh, Principal Skinner.
Principal Skinner. We had Principal.
You're such a slacker, Tom Paris.
And that's missed. He had the shotgun like he did in Back to the Future too, but he just didn't get to scream slacker in this movie. But I like him because he's a ridiculous character. Like in many ways, he plays the one-note cop. The fact that he allows Robert Duncan McNeil on several times to put him in his place shocks me. You know, just absolutely, you know, he's the butt of the joke in many ways, but I never saw him in anything else besides this in the Back to the Future movies. I don't remember
seeing him in a couple little bit television parts.
He was so great all the time.
He was such a great character actor. And I just got to say, since you threw that picture up just a second ago, how hilarious the one with him and Tom Paris in the microwave.
Yeah,
I thought it was so funny that Evil Lynn's scanner was jammed by a microwave. It was simultaneous. It was such a nothing scene, but the fact that happened, and they're just like, yes, they've got some kind of advanced jamming mechanism that's keeping us from scanning, and it's just a microwave. I thought that was just peak comedy. That was the other laugh out loud.
But see, that's the problem with the film is it's got a tonal issue.
It does.
It doesn't know what it wants to be, and I think that's why a lot of the jokes, even though they are cringy, they don't work just because of the tone of them, because everything else has been set up. We've got this ultra hyper realistic drama going on in, you know, with Skeletor and his Shakespearean approach and that, and then cutting to those jokes. Don't think it works.
Did you notice Skeletor's line about "Let this be our final battle"? And they repeated that in Revelations twice.
Yes,
Skeletor really loved that line.
Yeah. What about the scene where they're eating? They're around the thing and they're eating some meat.
Oh yes,
like kind of cringy joke. What is this food on sticks? Yes. And I like the fact that it actually added some layer of depth to those characters that from Eternity that clearly don't eat animals.
Well, no, all the animals talk.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, come on. It's like, would you want to eat a deer that's like,
no, I would not. You're right.
If you're going to eat me, at least turn me into sausage so my family won't recognize me.
Yeah. that's true. I didn't mind that scene too much.
No, I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too preachy. It was because, Man at Arms was just eating it happily, going, yeah, you got to eat stuff.
Yeah. But it was, I couldn't get over the whole time I'm watching this gun. Mattel were willing partners in allowing this version to get on screen rather than just to keep it simple. They allowed this to become what it did out of just pure not knowing how to handle their property, but it was a greed move.
It was
this
greed.
Is purely about making money. This thing.
As I said, it's the Transformers principle. Look at this, new action figures.
Oh, we get new action figures, all right, including even the end with this dude.
Yes, which I gotta say,
big upgrade
heck of a helmet.
Heck, I was like, dude, props for just keeping your balance with your
No
head.
kidding. That thing had to be made out of styrofoam, though. It had to have been.
It had to have been.
Either that or they found it in Spirit Halloween or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and as we showed the picture of before, their fight really was just, they were very fortunate they kind of put it together. And you can tell it's not really choreographed. It's very much do this, do that.
It is very fortunate that Castle Grayskull provides mood lighting for fights.
Yeah. A nice key light that changes color inexplicably.
They're either going to kill each other or they're going to kiss. Either one.
Yeah. And that's where the film it's got a fairly really strong beginning. The middle act's working, functional for the fact that they're on Earth and they're kind of going to keep it going. But it's this third act, isn't it? It's really awful. Even this scene here, which I thought was quite dramatic, where they've got him, he's getting whipped, he's getting tortured. He essentially gets out of it by getting a laser blast to the other one, to one of those chains, which breaks it. But then the other one, he just manually pulls it out of the ground.
Yeah, it's like he could have gotten out of there anytime he wanted to.
Anytime
I thought it was great. I thought it was great that Dolph Lundgren flinched before the whip hit him.
Yes,
like a good half second before. Which I'm not knocking on the guy. It's
that's not his fault.
Special effects. It's got to be hard. Fault. It's just one of those silly, corny things that you notice, and you're just like,
yeah. But see, you know what? The special effects guys probably grew up watching those films where they do, and that what used to happen in the 40s. So they're like, oh, wow, just like it was,
Absolutely. And it's fine. He-Man was basically being held hostage because he thought his friends were in danger. Yeah, he wouldn't have escaped on his own. Whenever he saw they were fine, it's like, oh, boom, Skeletor, I'm going to kill you. It's time for a low-level light sword fight.
That's
Although I'm kind of surprised.
And the sword fighting is really bad in this film.
I'm surprised Skeletor didn't pull out a lightsaber, to be honest.
No, and yes. And actually, when we look at the back there, we basically got a whole heap of soldiers who have just all wearing Vader helmets, basically.
Yes. Well,
and the similarity with Star Wars is quite significant in this film.
Well, they had to use robots because one of Mattel's demands for this movie is that He-Man not kill anyone. And so it's like, how do you get around not killing anybody? Well, it's the G.I. Joe principle. You just make all of the Skeletor's army robots, just like Cobra Commander's armies were all robots.
Yeah, Roger. Yeah, and that's one of the similarities of the film. Structurally, it doesn't really follow Star Wars, but it does follow that adventure kind of mode. But it's the music that struck me as being not the theme, which I do not like the theme at all.
No, it's
very cheesy.
It's too sci-fi-ish, too cheesy. It's
Battle Beyond the Stars type of music.
Oh yeah, Battle. Oh my gosh, I love that movie.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one day.
So much.
Yeah, me too. But it's that kind of level of music. It's when Bill Conti is actually scoring the film itself without using the main theme that it is literally. He is just ripping John Williams off.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to create, quite a lot. And it works to a certain level, but you've got to have the imagery to back that up. If you're going to do that kind of score, great, but you just didn't have it on screen to kind of back it up. And the strong visuals you did have, you didn't utilize them enough. So it was a film that I can't say... It's weird. I didn't have a horrible time watching it though, Jason. I didn't.
No, I didn't have a horrible time either. I thought I was going to, but it was enjoyable. It was flawed, tragically flawed, but at the same time, I don't hate that I rewatched it, and I don't hate this movie.
No, I'm glad it exists. I'm
Yeah,
glad it exists
it's
because
it's one of
really,
those
if it
strange
wasn't,
artifacts. It's a very
it is.
strange footnote, and most
Yeah,
people don't even know it does exist, and that's the funny part. Let me
yeah.
ask you
Well,
a question.
yeah, sure.
How would you have fixed this? Assuming you had the budget, what would you have done to fix this movie?
Straight away, you would not have it set on Earth, right? But
Hmm.
I don't mind the idea of being set on another planet because we've seen that quite a lot in He-Man. So if I had to keep the bare bones basics of this script, I'd absolutely have them when they are transported going to a different planet. Doesn't normally need to be Eternia. Certainly would have fixed it by showing Eternia being a vibrant society and something that you would want because really the motivations of Skeletor are, I just want it all, I'm just greedy. It's not going to be ours, it's going to be mine. And I just don't think as much as he did well, the script and service he's set up very well. Um, I would have Adam. Sorry, I would have had brought Adam into it.
See, I would have. Well, first of all, I think the biggest thing that killed this movie, and I'm just going to go off of the Mattel caveat. They wanted to sell new action figures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And they wanted to do the Transformers route. I would have gone the full Transformers route. I would have started out with, He-Man, Tila, Man-at-Arms, Ram Man, Stratos. I would have had all of them in it, and then
Yeah,
start
of
killing them
course.
off, and which would have been a completely heartless thing to do. But think about this. Whenever my best friend went to go see this movie in theaters, I didn't see it in theaters, but he did. I asked him how it was, and he goes, "It sucked. Not all, the characters were hardly even in it. There was no Orko, there was no this, there was no that. Who was in it? Well, Beastman was in it, but then he gets his butt kicked.
Yeah,
Think
yeah.
about this. Have all these characters, have Trapjaw, have Merman, have all these people, and then dispose of them somehow. Bring in the
Yeah,
new
even
characters.
him transport him to that other planet or something. They can come back
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right, because that's how you do it. And that way there you keep a couple of the key characters who then meet the new characters. They become the
Exactly.
good guys and everything else. Yeah, you're 100% right. The problem is the fact that they really didn't take the importance of Eternia and the legacy of those characters for the audience. They didn't take that into concern enough. I mean, like I said to you once, my favorite character that I owned was Stratos
Yes.
because I just loved the
Stratos.
figure.
Sean Connery
Yes,
with wings.
absolutely. But he was my favorite figure. I just liked the look and design of it. I liked the colors. And the fact that I don't get to get service by having that was a really missed opportunity there. It was like, to me, this has similarities with the New Adventures of He-Man. I felt like Mattel were trying to run away from what they'd established.
Well, I think the problem is that at the time, I think certainly that has changed, but at the time, Mattel just saw He-Man as money.
Yeah,
It doesn't have a legacy. It doesn't, the fans aren't that important. We're just doing this to make money. How can we make more money?
yeah.
And so I don't really think that they respect. Canon obviously didn't respect it because they were hacks and kind of thieves as well. And one other thing
So
that's missing
dodgy.
from this movie is, I think, the thing that always made He-Man interesting, and that was Prince Adam. There was no
Huge.
Prince Adam in this movie. That was
And
always
you
what I looked
know,
forward to every day, was him holding up the sword and transforming. And yeah, he says, "I have the power" at one point, but it's for no reason.
and not even a
And
great
yeah,
delivery of the
so
line.
not really. So what I would have done, instead of having a cosmic key, have Orko there trying to get the sorceress out of the bubble and accidentally transporting He-Man's sword to Earth. If we got to go to Earth, that's what they got to go and get. And so now
Right.
He-Man is Prince Adam. You send Tila, you send Orko, and you send Man-at-Arms, and now they got to go get the sword.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes more sense. That's more of a thing. And of course, Skeletor wants the sword too, so he's
Yeah.
going to send his minions after it as well.
Yeah.
Robert Duncan McNeil picks it up, and it's like, oh,
Who
look at
should
this
be
thing.
Adam? He should be Adam.
Yeah.
I would have accepted him
why
as
not-
young Adam.
Why
For
not
sure.
have Adam meet what is her name? The Friends girl. I've gone blank. Courtney
Cox.
Cox. Why not have Adam meet Courtney Cox and kind of fall in love with her? And then it's
That's
like,
it.
you don't have to be He-Man. You can be happy. You know,
and you're
that, and
building
then it,
upon the romance then, and then you've either got the scene where you have the ET scene at the end where they've got to separate and it's emotional, or you have the scene where she goes with him and now she's a princess. Instead, we've got Lubick who decides to stay on Eternia.
yes, and apparently he's living in Grayskull now. What the heck? What a
Yeah, and he's
slacker.
got a missus already.
Oh, that was to me the strangest part of the movie. It's like, yeah, there's beautiful women here. I'm like, where did she come from? Where has she been hiding? How long have we been here? Have you been here a week? Did you meet somebody in a week, or did she just come out of the supply closet going, "Oh my gosh, is Skeletor gone? Who's that sexy bald man?"
Yeah, and wasn't it very much a TV ending?
It really was.
Like, it really was. Like, they tie that up so
Yes.
poorly in the fact that you've literally got one set, all the characters, basically, all the good characters in one set, tie it all up, boom, you're out of there.
Yep. And of course, one of the very first after credit scenes teeing up the sequel that never happened.
Yes.
But you
And
want to
can
know
you-
something interesting, though?
What's
The
that?
sequel did happen. The sequel did happen. They were going to
In
call it
comic-
Masters of the Universe 2 Cyborg. And it was, they had written the script, they were ready to go.
Wow,
And then
is
this
all news
movie
to
was
me.
a flop, and they were like, well, you know, we can't make a Masters of the Universe sequel, but we still have this script. What should we do with it? So look for a movie, I think it was around 1988 or 1989, called Cyborg. That is
You're
the
kidding
script
me.
for Masters of the Universe 2. They just rewrote it and just made it an independent movie on its own.
Wow, that blew my mind. So the
Yeah,
Jean-Claude Van Damme Cyborg, which I loved as a kid.
I have to
loved
admit,
that
I don't
movie
think
as a
I've
kid.
ever actually seen it, but I
You
kind of want to see it.
Oh, my, that's blowing me away. I never
Yep.
knew that. That's fantastic. I love that. Well, Jace, I think that's basically it. I think we've covered this film. I can't think of anything else I want to talk about. I'm glad this film exists. I'll put it
I
this
am
way.
too.
Not my favorite thing in the world, but I'm glad it exists. And I think because this film exists, when we do get a live action He-Man show movie, I think this is just something that they'll refer to as a warning shot about
what not
making
to do.
sure to keep it to basics.
Do you think
and
Frank
staying
Langella?
true.
Do you think Frank Langella's too old to play Skeletor now?
Oh,
I mean, I think he could do
probably,
it.
but how amazing would that have been if he returned? You
Oh,
know?
I would poo my pants and
Yeah.
happy. Even Dolph Lundgren says that he would return in a Masters of the Universe movie if they gave him a part, and he mentioned maybe King Grayskull.
All right.
I think would actually be
I
really good
think
because
really good.
he was very regal in Aquaman. I actually didn't even recognize him in Aquaman at first, and I was like, wait a second,
Yeah.
that's He-Man.
That works. I'd be down for that for sure.
Yes.
But let's hope that this is a film that it's not the only time we get a He-Man film. So
I'm
But in
sure it
saying
is
that-
coming.
But in saying that, Jason, this wraps up season 1 of this show.
Yes. We're going to go on a hiatus for a couple of months because you're a punk and you're not going to be around.
I'm very, very busy. Yes, I'm going to be very much on the road for a little bit.
Yes.
But
Which it's
when we do
wonderful
return-
because it's success on your part, and I could not be happier for you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been amazing. And one of the things I'm going to miss the most is actually doing this show.
Yeah.
This is, as I've said throughout the series, this has been an incredible, wonderful journey for me because I've just got to rediscover something that's important to me as a kid, and now I'm falling back in love with it, which is wonderful. And to know that we've only scratched the surface, and when we do come back, there's going to be so much more to dig in. That's going to be wonderful. What that is and what that form, we will make announcements as we get closer to season 2. But
Yes.
I'm really excited
I
where
have
it's gonna
some
go.
things in mind.
So it's going to be really cool. So certainly next season 2 is that chance to go back to some of those series that I fell in love with.
Absolutely.
There was a whole show called She-Ra and the Princess of Power that I'm looking at my watch list on Netflix going, I've got to finish this off.
Yes. It is completely worth it. So we will revisit that. We'll revisit He-Man 2002. We'll revisit the original She-Ra, the original Master of the Universe. Heck, I may even be charitable and give the New Adventures of He-Man a try, but don't hold your breath.
Well, fantastic. Well, thanks for watching, guys, for this first season. We'll see you guys in a couple of months. And, to sign us off that final time for the first season, Jason, please go ahead.
And the power of J Skull.